Good afternoon, judges. My name is Mahit Ujjwal Jain, and I'm representing STIER GK Racing in today's cost report presentation. So we'll be starting off with the presentation.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yes. All right. So the base of any good go-kart is the chassis. It is also not the most expensive, but it is also usually the most difficult to account for. Our major cost here were the chassis tubes, all of which were sponsored. As you can see, 3,180 for the tubes, which is roughly 12 meters of AIS at 1018. We had considered 4130 and 1020, but since 1020 has a lower yield strength and 4130 is significantly more expensive, we didn't feel like the cost to strength ratio was enough to justify 4130. Also, welding with 4130 was going to be significantly more difficult than welding with AIS at 1018, which is why we chose these tubes, which has saved us some money. And also, the tubes were sponsored. All our mounts, our floor panel, our pedal board, everything have been laser cut. And again, as you can see here, they have been sponsored. So this has also saved us a lot of costs. Moving on to the steering. Here, our major cost is the steering wheel, which is an OEM part. So we went with a relatively cheap steering wheel because we just needed to last the distance of a race, which is why we didn't have a lot of considerations here. But we did go a little bit expensive with the tie rods, the rod and bearings, and the bearings for the steering column, just to make sure we have them be as smooth as possible during the events. All right. I'll be handing over the presentation to Anjali.
Hello, judges. I'll be starting off with the wheel assembly. Uh, the wheel assembly is an integral part of the car. It mainly consists of several components such as the braking system, hub shaft, and the wheel. Each of these components are designed for the account to factor many will have the to factor many which will affect the assembly and the function. On the given screen, you have the following: uh, rear rear wheel hubs, which cost nearly 2,600. Moving on to the spindle axle and the bracket, which cost nearly 2,000, and the 2 the 20 SKF bearings, which cost nearly 500. The front wheel assembly and the hub nuts cost 2,152. The tires, which are the costliest here, cost 12,000, and the rims cost is 8,000. Lastly, for our components, we develop laser cutting in order to preserve the precision and the design geometry. For the hubs, we chose internal tooling operations and the wire EDF, which are less expensive and just as precise as the other techniques. This is permitted to us by a raw material for the same. It is produced from aluminium 616061 Deep 6. Next, moving on to the bodyworks. The vital aspects of a racing car is the bodywork. This section of the vehicle gives the vehicle its streamlined and aerodynamic shape, covering the mechanical and aerodynamic components. Here are the major costs of our bodyworks: the front bumper, side bumper, the nose, and the rear bumpers. The front bumper's cost is 2,060, the side bumper's cost is 4,120, and the nose cost is 2,600. The rear bumpers also cost is 2,060. The cost of these parts are here. The organization that specialized in fiberglass fully financed the bodywork panels. They also supplied the resins and the other consumables. Moving on.
Sorry about that. Good morning, judges.
The major components of our braking system are the fluid lines, the caliper, and the master cylinder. We have sourced OEM parts for mostly everything, the master cylinder and the brake caliper. We're using both those components off of commercially available bikes. That is, we're using the master cylinder off of a Pulsar and the brake caliper out of the Apache RTR 160. We chose OEM components for their easy dependability and assembly and all of that. However, we did choose to spend extra money on custom length SAE 100 R7 fluid lines, the high pressure fluid lines. This gave us a lot of flexibility in terms of the design of the braking system and allowed us sort of an ease of access and ease of assembly and things like that. So hence we've spent quite a bit of money on that. The rest of the assembly is laser cut, bent, assembled, and fastened using fasteners. On to the next slide, please. Now, for the powertrain, the powertrain we have used a solid rear axle that is made of medium carbon EN8. The wheel hubs that we're using, we have gone for a pretty simple design that is the through bolt design, which saved us a lot of money as compared to the keyways or the involute splines. The motor that we use is a Mechatronic 3 kilowatt brushless DC motor. We have spent around 45,000 on it. We did, however, save quite a lot of costs here by buying from local vendors. The sprocket that we use is laser cut, which was sponsored to us. And the motor controller was came as a set with the motor uh, that is from Mechatronic. Um, Thank you, Justice. That's powertrain. On to you, Purna.
Good afternoon, judges. So, as far as the high voltage is concerned, we're using a Micronix lithium ferrophosphate 48-volt battery, which has costed at around 47,200, which is one of the major costs in the whole of the go kart. And the additional parts in the high voltage will be our contactors, which is from Dongia. It's rated for 100 amps. It's a high voltage DC contactor, and in order to connect different components like the battery to the controller, we're using Anderson connectors, which is SB120, rated for around nominal 120 amps, which costs around 550. And we got it sourced from a local vendor here. And one of the parts, that is the TSD, tractive system disconnect, or the HVD, high voltage disconnect, is from TE connectivity, which costed us around 23,000, but it is completely sponsored, and this is the HVD we are using. The model number, as you can see, is 2103 and the fuse that we are using is 100 Eton 100 LED, which is rated for 100 amps, which is our almost more than the peak current we are running, which costed us 1800. Okay, so as far as the low voltage is concerned, the major cost in this is the circuits, which costs us around 3,000 rupees. This includes all the circuit components, small core components, diodes, resistors, perf boards, whatever the ICs we needed, everything, soldering and all that, everything included is it's costed around 3,000. And we're using a kill switch, it's push rotate one, which costed us around 3000 sorry 360 for two of them. And we're using a Uno Minda master switch, which has got two keys, so that costed us around 300. The low voltage battery we're using is from Micronix again. It's a lithium ferrophosphate chemistry. It's a 12.8-volt battery with 12 Ah of capacity, which costed us around 2100. And we're also using a limit switch for our brake light, which is 70 rupees, and also a toggle switch which is mounted, yeah, on the dashboard of the driver, which is around 650 rupees. So yeah.
Yeah, moving on to the miscellaneous parts. So we have our push bar and our cart stand. The cart stand was built in-house with the tubes that we already had, but in total, the tubes, the welding, everything cost 3,000 in total, along with the wheels. And another part of the miscellaneous costs are the firewall. The firewall is unfortunately pretty expensive, and we needed quite a lot of it. So, cost us 4,500, and our fasteners in total cost us 1,500. All fasteners that we have bought and used on the cart, and the push bar, which is basically two MS tubes, cost us 200 bucks. So, uh, we have used the minimal sponsorship here because these are relatively cheap parts that not a lot of people are ready to sponsor. But we have made sure to make all the parts as robust as possible with the amount of money that we have spent to make sure the car doesn't get damaged or the driver doesn't get hurt, as safety is paramount here. Yeah, that's it for the presentation, judges. Thank you.
Team, quickly open the cost report that you have submitted.
Yes, sir.
All right. To understand your cost report better, just wanted to clarify one thing. You mentioned you got many things as sponsored.
Yeah.
So, what cost have you mentioned in the cost report? Is it like zero or sponsored cost, or is it the full cost of the component?
We've mentioned the full cost, sir. We've mentioned the cost that our sponsors told us. All the laser cutting and the welding costs and all have been mentioned to us by our sponsor. We haven't been given a proper uh, bill, but they have given us a breakdown of the cost. So we've mentioned
That's fine.
those.
That's fine. That was too clear. Okay. Can you zoom in a little, please?
Yes, sir.
You can use, yeah. Go to BOM sheet.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. Then